Right now, there is a man thinking about you. He doesn't know why he can't forget you. He's tried, told himself it was just a phase, a moment, a passing connection. But still, there you are. Not in his inbox, not in his arms, but in his thoughts. In the quiet between tasks, in the space before he falls asleep. In the feeling he can't name when a certain song comes on. You didn't cast a spell. You didn't chase. You simply reflected something he didn't know he was looking for until you appeared. He pulled away, maybe without warning, maybe without explanation. And now you're left in the echo of his absence, wondering what went wrong, doubting what you felt. But what if it wasn't rejection? What if his silence wasn't distance, but disruption, the disorientation of something awakening too deep for words? See, men are taught to speak the language of their unconscious. They live in a culture that trains them to suppress emotion, posture strength, and speak in control. But love, real love, doesn't ask for control. It shatters it. What if what you called mixed signals was actually his soul learning a new language? This is not seduction advice. This is not how to get a text back. This is revelation of how male love speaks before words arrive. Of what happens in the hidden places of a man's heart when a woman touches not just his eyes, not just his desire, but the image of his inner feminine. Carl Jung called this the Anima. And when a woman awakens it, a man doesn't fall in love with her performance. He falls into a mirror, and nothing is ever the same again. Now let's begin. Carl Jung didn't study romance, he studied the soul. And in the soul of every man he found a mystery, a hidden image, an echo of something lost and longed for. He called it the anima, the feminine aspect of a man's unconscious mind. Not a woman, an energy, an inner presence, a force of feeling, beauty, chaos, intuition, and receptivity. The anima is not his mother, not his lover. She is what he cannot access within himself until something or someone awakens her. You don't awaken her by saying the right thing. You don't unlock her by looking a certain way. You awaken her by being symbolically resonant. Let me explain. Men live split between what they show and what they suppress. The world rewards their thinking, performance, and logic. But their unconscious? It's a different kingdom entirely. It speaks in images, dreams, myths, symbols. A woman who resonates with a man's inner world, who reflects the beauty, softness, wildness, or truth he buried to survive, becomes more than a partner. She becomes a mirror, not just of what he wants, but of what he lost. You see, a man doesn't fall in love with a checklist. He falls in love when he sees his soul reflected in your presence. Not because you're perfect, not because you perform, because you are the one who calls out his unconscious. And that's terrifying. Why? Because the anima doesn't just inspire, she undoes. She brings chaos to the structure. She stirs longing in the man who has spent decades numbing it. This is why you feel the pull and the confusion. He seems captivated, but scared. Present, but evasive. He looks at you like you're the answer to a question he forgot how to ask. That's because you are. When a man meets a woman who reflects his anima, she doesn't just turn him on. She turns him inward. He begins to feel things he cannot name, things he didn't know he still carried. Longing, grief, wonder, fear, and most of all, recognition. You might have felt it too, that strange magnetism, that we've met before sensation that transcends logic. Jung called this synchronicity, when outer events mirror inner states in meaningful ways. He shows up in your life just when you're ready to see him. He calls at the exact moment you think of him. You say the same phrase at the same time. He remembers the book you loved years ago. That's not a trick. That's not fate being cute. That's your unconscious fields communicating beyond what either of you can explain. You're not imagining things, you're witnessing the unseen. And here's the most important thing I can tell you. Men don't fall in love with your efforts. They fall in love with your resonance. The way you embody something their soul has been aching for. The way your presence reintroduces him to himself. The way you become not just a woman, but a symbol. The unconscious doesn't know you as Sarah or Emily or Monica. It knows you as the threshold, the muse, the mirror, the one who opens the door. And here's where the story turns inward. When you awaken a man's anima, he might feel awe. But he will also feel fear. Why? Because to love you, he must meet himself. Not the version he shows the world, but the tender, exiled one. And that journey isn't always smooth. He may pull away not because he doesn't feel, but because he feels too much. Not because you're too much, but because you reflect too clearly. Not because you said the wrong thing, but because you said the real thing. You didn't ask him to change. You didn't give him a script. You simply stood in your own radiance, and that light revealed his shadows. That's what real feminine power does. It's not manipulation, it's invocation. You didn't make him fall. You stirred something ancient. You mirrored his longing for emotional homecoming. And now he's trying to understand, without the tools he was ever given. Men are rarely taught how to process the depth of connection. They are taught to want a woman, but not to feel her, to possess, not to merge, to admire, but not dissolve. But love, true love, dissolves. It crumbles identity, it undoes certainty, and it calls him into the one thing he's been avoiding, vulnerability. So when a man truly loves a woman, you must understand, it's not always a straight line. It's not always a confession. It might not even be safe or right to act on. But if you've ever seen that look in his eyes, that lingering gaze that says, "I know you," before his mind can catch up, then you've touched something eternal. And the truth is, he may forget your birthday. He may fumble his words. He may even walk away. But he will not forget the woman who awakened his anima. He will carry that memory not as a regret, but as a mark, a turning point, a threshold crossed. Because you weren't just a woman. You were a moment, a mirror, a myth, and his soul will always remember what it meant in you. So no, this isn't a guide on how to keep a man. This is a remembering of who you become when love stops being performance and starts being reflection. When you stop asking, "How do I make him love me?" and start asking, "What does he see in me that he cannot explain?" That is where the real story begins. When a man truly loves a woman, the words may not come first. What comes first is disorientation, and then behavior. Not the grand gestures Hollywood has conditioned us to seek, not the roses, the rooftop confessions, the loud declarations of "you're the one." No, when a man is emotionally activated, when his unconscious is stirred by the presence of a woman who reflects his anima, his soul begins to speak in symbols, and the body follows. Let's descend now, slowly, into that spiral. Here are the unmistakable signals, subtle, sacred, often missed, that tell you he is not merely interested, he is involved. Let's begin with the eyes. When a man is truly connected to you, something shifts in the way he looks at you. His gaze lingers, but it's not lust you're seeing, it's recognition. As if he's searching for something inside you and already found it. It's not the look of possession, it's the look of homecoming. He stares as though you carry the blueprint to a forgotten feeling. And what's more, he doesn't always realize he's doing it. You might catch him looking at you when he thinks you're not watching, in a moment of rest, in a passing glance. His pupils dilate, his body leans, his soul moves toward you before his mind can catch up. Jung would say this isn't behavior, it's a projection. He's not just seeing you. He's seeing the emotional territory inside himself that your presence reveals. Next comes physical presence. This is one of the most telling signs and one of the most misunderstood. A man faking interest will oscillate, close one moment, distant the next, hot, cold, unpredictable. A man in genuine emotional resonance? He orients. What does that mean? He doesn't run when life gets complicated. He doesn't vanish when you reveal something tender. He doesn't bolt when your truth emerges. He stays, not because he's trying to impress you, but because something in him anchors when you're near. You don't have to ask for his time. He offers it. Not always in grand volumes, but in consistency. You become a place he wants to return to. A familiar presence in an overwhelming world, the symbol of calm in his chaos. And you'll notice something else. In a group, his body turns toward you. His feet point in your direction. He finds ways to be close, even without touching. It's not calculated, it's instinct. An invisible thread pulls him toward your space, again and again. Let's spiral deeper now, to memory and retention. He remembers things most others forget, a story you told once in passing, a book you said changed your life, a food you mentioned craving at midnight. These are not just cute details. They are symbols, emotional hieroglyphs his unconscious has tagged as meaningful. He may not recall the facts from work meetings, but he remembers the way your voice changed when you talked about your father. He recalls the date you had that argument, not to keep score, but because the emotional tone etched itself into his awareness. This is not effort, this is imprint. You didn't demand his attention, you simply mattered. Not to his checklist, but to his psyche. Next is the instinct to protect, and this is important. This is not about control, not about ownership, not about outdated gender roles. It's a symbolic urge, a biological and psychological fusion of attention, care, and sacred regard. When a man truly loves a woman, her emotional safety becomes part of his internal landscape. He notices when your energy changes, when your tone dips, when your eyes glaze. He asks questions, not to pry, but to understand. Not to fix you, but to be with you. That's what most women miss. He's not trying to solve you. He's trying to witness you. That witnessing, that protective stillness is how his unconscious says, "You matter to me." You'll feel it when he walks on the outside of the sidewalk and watches how others speak to you, when he offers his jacket without a word. These are not rehearsed lines from a guidebook. They are expressions of energetic prioritization. Now watch for this next one. It's subtle, but seismic. He lets you see his cracks. This is the one that scares him the most. Jung said that the self does not emerge through strength, but through wholeness, and wholeness requires the acceptance of all parts, even the broken ones. When a man is emotionally invested, he begins to let go of the performance mask. You'll see hesitation in his voice when he talks about his past. You'll hear a stammer when he admits to failure. You'll sense the tremor in his story when he shares what he's never told anyone. This is not weakness. This is offering, sacred offering. He is showing you what the world taught him to hide. Not because you asked, but because something in your presence says, it's safe here. Now let's talk about social integration. When a man is in a performance state, he keeps compartments. You're in the romantic box. Friends are in another, family in another. His emotional world sealed off. But when love breaks through to the unconscious, the compartments dissolve. He begins to include you. Naturally. You're not asking to meet his friends. He introduces you. You don't fish for his plans. He invites you. You don't wonder where he went. He tells you, even if you didn't ask. Not because he's claiming you, because you've become part of his identity matrix. An identity, in Jungian terms, is not ego. It's the symbolic structure that defines who I am becoming. You are in his becoming. That's why he speaks of you with pride, not because you're his possession, but because you reflect his initiation into a deeper manhood. Now we enter sacred territory, the projection of the future. This one is holy and real. A man in emotional resonance doesn't just make plans, he begins to see you in his life's architecture. He talks about where he wants to live, and you're in the picture. He describes his dream trip, and he's already imagined your reactions to the scenery. He speaks of children, family, legacy, not abstractly, but with a tone that includes your presence. Not forced, not performative, just there, because you've become part of the emotional landscape he is now navigating toward. Don't underestimate this. A man will share a bed with many women, but he will only place one woman inside his life map when the anima is stirred. And finally, perhaps the deepest proof of all, consistency across time. This is where illusions fall away. Jung said the unconscious is not what we hide, it is what we are but do not yet see, and time reveals it. A man who is pretending will not sustain the gaze, the presence, the memory, the care, because it's not rooted in truth. A man in resonance, he remains. Not always perfectly, not always with clarity, but with presence. He doesn't ghost. He doesn't disappear without explanation. He might struggle, yes, he might falter, but he returns, not because of guilt or strategy, but because something in you calls him home. Consistency is the body's way of saying, this is not just a season, this is part of my path. So you must ask yourself, not, is he saying what I need to hear? But, what is his body saying in silence? What does his attention do when no one is watching? What does he remember, protect, and share, without being prompted? This is where the truth lives, not in declarations, in demonstrations. Because when a man truly loves a woman, it is not because she tried to be lovable. It is because her presence reflected a lost piece of his soul. And in loving her, he is finally beginning to love part of himself. He may not say it, he may never be able to explain it, but he will show it, again and again, in the gaze that doesn't waver, the space that always welcomes you, and the memory that holds you like a sacred flame, because you didn't perform your way into his heart. You mirrored your way into his unconscious. And there, You became unforgettable. Let's be honest. If you're watching this, you've likely questioned yourself more times than you can count. You've read the text thread over and over, trying to decode his tone. You've replayed the last conversation, wondering if you said too much or not enough. You've sat in silence, asking yourself, if he felt something, why didn't he stay? Here's the hard truth wrapped in grace. When a man truly loves a woman, it's not always clean. Because love, real love, doesn't just awaken longing, it awakens every wound that once made him run. You may have mistaken his retreat for rejection, but often it's a response to the overwhelm of feeling. Not because you were too much, but because you mirrored everything he wasn't yet ready to see in himself. The love was real, the fear was real too. This is the first emotional pitfall. Seeking verbal proof for what you already know in your body. You wanted clarity. That's human. But the masculine wound is often an expression. He was taught to conquer, not feel, to perform, not reveal. So when something sacred stirs in him, he doesn't always have language for it. And you've been conditioned to wait for words to validate what your intuition already told you. But the feminine doesn't need proof. She knows, she senses, she feels it in the pause before he speaks, in the space between his excuses, in the way his voice changes when he says your name. The second pitfall is more subtle and more dangerous. Overperforming for reassurance. You sensed the connection, but when he didn't confirm it, you doubled down. You became brighter, more agreeable, more available. Not because you lacked value, but because you forgot it was never your performance that called him in to begin with. It was your presence, your stillness, your beingness. The moment we begin to chase proof, we lose the very essence that made the connection sacred in the first place. You don't have to hustle for love, not real love, not the kind that echoes in the bones and survives the silence. Carl Jung said that the feminine is the vessel through which the unconscious speaks. She doesn't persuade, she reflects. She doesn't beg, she reveals. She doesn't prove, she is. So when a man starts to pull away, your power is not in chasing. Your power is in holding your field. Staying rooted in your knowing. Remembering, he saw something in me. If it scared him, that's not a burden to shrink. You see, the most sacred connections are not always meant to be pursued. They are meant to be recognized. And sometimes, that recognition comes with grief. Because the man you stirred may not be ready to meet the part of himself you awakened. But let me tell you something. Even if he walks away, even if he never speaks the words you long to hear, even if he returns to safety and silence, you changed him. You may not get the love story, but you were the moment something ancient stirred. You don't need him to say it for it to be real. This brings us to your truthful feminine power. You are not here to audition for love. You are here to awaken it, by embodying your own essence so fully that the men around you either rise to meet you or walk away because they cannot yet hold what you reveal. And either way, you win. Not because you got the relationship, but because you remained rooted in truth. Jung taught that wholeness does not mean perfection. Wholeness is the marriage of opposites, of light and dark, of clarity and confusion, of longing and surrender. So here is your work now, not to convince a man of your worth, but to return to your center. You are the mirror, the myth, the magnetic field. If he turned away, it's not because you weren't worthy. It's because he looked in your eyes and saw everything he wasn't yet ready to love in himself. But know this, no man ever forgets the woman who held up that mirror. No man ever fully returns to the man he was before her. Because love, real, archetypal love, leaves a mark. Not of pain, but of remembrance. You weren't meant to fit into his idea of a woman. You were meant to awaken the anima within him, the part he buried, the part he longed for, the part he never learned how to hold. That is no small task. That is soul work. So now, I ask you to release the narrative of rejection, to surrender the shame of not being enough, to stop translating your intuition into self-doubt. What if you were never meant to be chosen in the way the world taught you? What if you were chosen long ago, by the field of life itself, to be the woman who awakens the deeper truth in a man's heart? And what if that was the gift all along? When a man truly loves a woman, he doesn't always understand what he's feeling. He stumbles, he retreats, he contradicts himself. But deep inside, the imprint remains. You were the moment the mask cracked. The silence broke, the heart stirred. He may never say it, he may never come back, but he was changed. And you are not here to wait for his arrival. You are here to remember your radiance, to live as the mirror, to walk as the threshold. You don't need his validation to confirm the sacredness of what you shared, because you felt it, because you knew, because you were awake when he wasn't. And that kind of knowing, that's power, that's presence, that's love, at the level where words can't reach. So come back to yourself now. To the woman who never needed to be more, to the soul who already was. Because whether he stayed or not, whether he claimed you or collapsed, you did your part. You reflected, you revealed, you remembered. And that is more than enough. He may never say it, he may never send the message, never voice the truth aloud, never admit what really happened inside him when he looked at you and saw not just a woman, but a reflection of everything he was aching to feel. But still, he remembers. Not the conversations, not even the moments. What he remembers is the feeling. The version of himself that came alive in your presence, that quiet sense of being seen without having to perform, that subtle freedom he felt to soften, to be human, to feel something real. He doesn't miss the dates. He misses who he was when he was with you. That kind of memory is sacred. It does not fade. It lives beneath words, in his body, in his choices, in the quiet ache he can't explain. You were not forgotten. You were formative. Because you didn't just offer him attention, you offered him a mirror. And even if he couldn't meet you there, even if he turned away from the magnitude of it, what he saw in you, he cannot unsee. You were the moment the soul spoke louder than the mind. And it changed him. Now breathe. You don't need to carry the weight of what could have been. You only need to honor what was and who you were brave enough to be. He may never say it, but in the silence, ask yourself what part of him woke up because of me. That answer, that truth, never fades.